Welcome to the San Gorgonio chapter monthly Zoom Trail Talk series. My name is John St. Clair, and I will be your Zoom host. And I'm going to go over a few guidelines for this Zoom session. And I also happen to be the speaker tonight, but that'll come later. So the main thing is we want everybody to be muted. And if you have a question, so you don't forget it, go to the chat section, which there's a little talking bubble at the bottom of my screen. And when I click on it, the default is to send it to everyone. And so just leave it there and type in your question, and Julianne will relay them to me later. I will probably stop. There's like 3 sections of my talk tonight, so I'll stop after the first section to see if there are any questions, and after the second section as well. So other than that, everybody needs to stay muted. And let's see, what do we want to do here? It looks like we have 14 participants now. And I apologize, I did not have time to send out the reminder email that I usually do that has the link to the San Gorgonio chapter YouTube page. And so if you don't know how to get to that, I think it may be on the write-up, but that's going to disappear after tonight. You can email me to get, or if I get a chance at some point, I may paste in the link for the YouTube channel. Actually, maybe I can do that now. Let's see. YouTube channel.
I got it, John.
Oh, you have it?
It's in the chat, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so Marianne put the link to the YouTube channel, San Gorgonio chapter YouTube channel, and I will get this recording posted there, if not tonight, tomorrow morning sometime.
But wait a minute, that's not it.
That's
Yeah.
not it.
I forgot to copy it before I pasted it in. Yeah, okay.
Do you get it now?
Weird. No, it's not getting, I'll get there. Hold on. I'll get it in there.
Well, I can do it.
Okay, yeah, it's I got it now. I had something else in my, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I just put it in.
Okay, me too. All right.
And you did too. Okay, so it's in there twice.
So ignore the other one.
We may have to do that. Maybe you can do it later, because
Right.
anyone who joins our session will not see what we just did.
Mm-hmm.
The chat doesn't show what happens before they join the session. So I want to mention that next month, the Trail Talk topic is hiking the Arizona Trail. And also want to mention that, we are doing outings. And so I just led a hike to Timber Mountain today, beautiful day. We almost canceled because of rain. It rained all the way up, driving up the mountain, but then it cleared up and we hiked, and it was just a gorgeous day. And as the summer ends, the weather gets better. And actually, I think autumn is the best time of the year to go hiking in the mountains. It's just gorgeous with the leaves turning and the temperature's cooler. So keep an eye out on the outings that are posted, and you might find something that's interesting. So at this point, what I'm going to do is remove my spotlight, and I'm going to put the spotlight on Julianne, and she can introduce the speaker.
Well, thank you, John. And our speaker tonight, of course, is John St. Clair, our intrepid friend and colleague, and co-member of the committee for Trail Talk. And here's what he'd like you to know. John St. Clair is a San Gorgonio chapter outings leader, and has been the Outings Chair for the Los Serranos Group since 2012. He also serves as a member of the Los Serranos Group Executive Committee, a member of the Trail Talk Committee, as we just mentioned, and helps train new San Gorgonio chapter outings leaders. And we've just added quite a few. And John has been just intrepid in training people and hosting his own hikes. So John has been furiously on the trail on behalf of the San Gorgonio chapter. So kudos to John. And he has just a beautiful program in store for us this evening. We saw the practice session on Monday, and we are about to learn all about the Inca Trail and Machu Picchu. So with that, John, take it away.
Okay, I'll put the spotlight on me, and then I will share my screen. And I will start it. Okay, so this presentation is called 2016 Trip to Peru, Exploring Cusco and the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. This is a photo I took of Machu Picchu, and it's the iconic view of it. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous place. Some interesting facts about it. Well, first of all, I'll get to the facts later. The way we went, our tour guides were provided by Explorandes. We actually booked the trip through a Scottish travel agency called Mac Adventures. They still exist, but they no longer book Peru trips. What they did is they had Explorandes do all the, boots on the ground doing the tour, and they had Mac Adventures handled the money, the financial part. So now you go directly to Explorandes. There are other tour companies in Peru, which are probably pretty good, but I highly recommend Explorandes for reasons I will explain during this presentation. And that's the address of this webpage you see. And they do not give quotes online for the cost. So you have to make an inquiry. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe costs are fluctuating. But for me, when I did it in 2016, the cost was $1,800. And that covered 4 days of hiking, all meals paid. It covered 1 day of a guided tour of the Sacred Valley and lodging and meals paid. And it included nights lodging in Agua Calientes after we had finished the hike. And after having a tour of Machu Picchu the next day, a really big, beautiful early afternoon meal, again paid. And then the train trip back to Cusco to spend 1 more night in the hotel. Again, all that's paid. And then the bus to the airport and the bus to pick us up at the airport when we got to Cusco. So, we had to pay airfare, and but everything else was covered. And $1,800 is probably more than that now. Although, because we went through the Scottish firm Mac Adventures, I'm sure they tacked on something. Going directly to Explorandes is probably a good idea anyway. In fact, I have a friend that did it that way a couple of years later, and he was very happy. So here's a map of most of South America, showing all of Peru. So Peru is bordered by Ecuador and Colombia on the north, and Brazil on the east, and Bolivia on the southeast, and Chile on the south. And the Amazon River, it flows into the Atlantic Ocean on the Brazilian coast. And you can see the river. It starts at Macapá, I guess it is, has an accent on the end. and it goes all the way into Peru. The Amazon River starts in Peru, and that's north of Cusco. You can see Cusco on this map, and the river comes into northeastern Peru, and then there are a number, about 4 or 5 tributaries, rivers in Peru that join together and eventually flow into the Amazon in Peru, and then most of the Amazon, of course, is in Brazil, and other tributaries add to it. Amazon is the largest river in the world as far as water flow is concerned, second longest. But the big thing about this map, do you see on the coast of Peru, you see Lima on the coast, that's where we flew into. It's a different color. That's desert. They get very little rainfall on the west coast, and all the rain is east of the Andes, which is where the rainforest is. The huge Brazilian rainforest is not just the Amazon River basin. It covers a large portion of Brazil and comes into Peru. So we actually were hiking into the edge of the rainforest when we went on this trip. So here's another map showing mostly just Peru, and you can see Ecuador, Colombia to the north, Brazil to the east, and you can see the Amazon River coming in the northern part. It's kind of bluish, and then they turn it to yellow when it's in Peru, but that's still the Amazon River, and then you can see the other tributaries adding to the beginning of the Amazon. So we flew on July 4th out of the LAX airport to the Lima airport, which is just 113 feet elevation. It's right on the coast. Then we flew to Cusco airport, which is 10,860 feet elevation. Quite a difference. The city of Cusco is listed as 11,152. And this was something I learned I didn't know before the trip. I had heard, Machu Picchu, this high elevation place. Machu Picchu elevation is 7,972. Now, granted, that's not sea level, but Cusco is way higher. So what we did to condition ourselves and acclimate ourselves, we actually spent 4 extra days in Cusco that was not part of the package that Mac Adventures sold us. So that was totally on our own. As far as paying for hotel and meals, we were on our own for those 4 days. But that allowed us to explore Cusco, which is a fascinating city. It was the capital of the Inca Empire, and lots of historical stuff there. And while we were walking around at 11,000 feet, we were acclimating ourselves to high altitude. So it worked out very nicely. Here we are at the hotel. You notice the slant in the stone on the side. You'll see these streets. This street was rather steep. So we actually got there. We flew on July 4th. We got there before the sun rose on July 5th. We flew during the night. It's kind of a red eye. And we slept for a while once we got our rooms, and then we went out on July 5th to explore. Now, this is the street down from the hotel, all cobblestone, stone foundations for the buildings as well. And I think what we did is we walked down to that light, and then we made a left, if I remember, to get to downtown Cusco. But it's, it's been 7 years. I'm not positive of that. So let me go back here. These stones here have mortar in between them because these are new buildings. The old stuff that the Incas built in their capital city has no mortar. They were master rock cutters and master builders. I mean, they had everything just fit so, and they've had big earthquakes there since the time of the Incas, and the foundations that the Incas built are still there, and then they build buildings on top of them. And that was just fascinating. Now, they didn't build all their things with no mortar, but the special buildings they did, and in the capital, most everything was special. But religious buildings always were built with this kind of stonework. So here we are in the center of the town with the big churches, and this was still that first day. It looks like it's getting close to the end of the day here. We were walking around just, exploring. Beautiful buildings. The second day, July 6th, we walked up to the top of a hill overlooking the city of Cusco to see El Cristo Blanco, a big statue of Jesus Christ, and a great view of the city below. That's what it looked like from up there on that hill. I don't know what the population of Cusco is now, but it's a fairly large city. The third day, July 7th, we went to the Chocolate Museum, which had a little cafe. I ordered European-style hot chocolate. Then we went to a museum of natural history, which had a large potato exhibit, because Peru is the world capital of potatoes. They have hundreds of varieties of potatoes that grow at different elevations. So they're all adapted to grow at a certain elevation, and they all look, they're all potatoes, they're related, but they look, they're different sizes, they look different. They're different sizes, different colors, different shapes. So, but one of my favorite museums was this chocolate museum. And I took pictures of the process of making the chocolate. We bought chocolate bars, and in the cafe, I ordered the European style hot chocolate. It was served to me like this: a little pitcher of warm milk, and then a container of the chocolate syrup, and I mixed it together and then drank it in the cup. So the Potato Museum, well, the Museum of Natural History had this huge exhibit of potatoes. I don't know how many there were, but they had them each displayed with their names, and they had lots and lots and lots of potatoes. And see, some of them are striped. They're different shapes, and they all grow at different altitudes, and they've adapted to growing at a certain altitude, which is kind of fascinating. We also went to an Inca museum on July 7th, and it was a good day to be inside. That whole day we did museums because it was raining all day. Now, let me say something about that. We left on July 4th. We chose July because that's the driest month of the year in Cusco and Machu Picchu. The wettest, and you see, that's their winter. July is their winter because they're south of the equator, although they're very close to the equator. So there's not not drastic differences between their seasons because they're just south of Ecuador, which is where the equator goes through. So we chose July because that is the month that has the least rain, because we didn't want to be hiking in the rain. And fortunately for us, we timed it perfectly. It rained in Cusco for one day. This day it rained all day long practically, but we spent the day inside museums, so it was no big deal. And there were a few showers, I think one other day, but on the trail we had no rain at all, which was very fortunate. July 8th, we went to the Mercado. That was an experience. And of course they had food there, and their potatoes were selling there. Different kind. I think there's like 5 different kinds of potatoes there. We ate every day at a small restaurant about 100 feet down the street from the hotel. It was called Granja Heidi. And what a lucky find that was. We that first day, we were looking for a place to eat, and we started walking down. We saw this little alcove we walked into, and here was this menu. And we're standing there looking at that, and someone comes down some stairs and says, "This is the best restaurant in Cusco. We live here. We highly recommend it." They happen to speak English with an accent. And so we tried it, and we loved it. It was a 5-course meal for $8. And they started out with an appetizer, and it was always served, with presentation in mind. like a gourmet place. Then we got soup. Then we got salad with some other thing on a plate. Then we got the main entree, and every day was different. And then we got a dessert. This shows the cheesecake. This was chocolate cake with chocolate dribbled over the top. That was really good. But we ate quite well there. And every day they had this special, I think it was from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, that you could get for $8. You got this great meal. And like I say, the meal was different soup every day, different main course every day, and different dessert every day. We always got salad. But it was quite good. I'm sorry to say, I looked it up on the internet. They had lots of write-ups about it, but they're all from the past. It did not survive COVID, and they are the most recent thing I saw from 2022 is that it said they are closed permanently. Some of the older websites that had it had a link to go to the website for the restaurant. I clicked on it and it was in Chinese. So they don't use that address anymore. And so I think it unfortunately is closed. But there are good restaurants, good eating in Cusco. I don't know that you could find one as cheap as this was. This is where the locals went. And it was just fantastic. Okay, on July 9th, we took an Exploradis tour bus. So we spent July 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th on our own in Cusco, 4 days. We flew in July 4th. Then on July 9th, Exploradis, and this is when the package deal started. So from this point on, for the next 5-6 days, we didn't pay anything. Everything was covered. And the tour bus took us to the Sacred Valley and several Inca sites on a full day guided tour. And it was fabulous. This shows terraced landscape for farming. They did a lot of that. Back then, these aren't currently used. The Incas used this. And this was one of the Inca temples, I think, that the tour bus took us to. Lots of tourists there climbing up to the top. So let me go back here. So after a full day of this tour bus, it took us to a hotel. We spent the night. Then the next morning, bright and early, we got up and the bus took us and dropped us off at the starting point for our trek on the Inca Trail. This photo shows the porters waiting to start their day. We had to drop off our gear. They weighed our duffel bags. They had to be under a certain weight. And all this gear was carried by these guys. And they aren't big men. They carried a tremendous amount of weight on their backs, and they hiked way faster than we did. They were amazing. There were 10 of us in this group. Most of us were friends. I think there was only one person that I had never met before, because he was a friend of another friend that came. So 10 hikers, 18 support people, 2 full-time cooks, the hiking leader and his assistant. The hiking leader is always at the front. The assistant was what we call in Sierra Club hikes, he was the sweep. He was at the end of the group. And the rest were porters. And they had to carry not only our gear, they had to carry all the kitchen stuff, the big propane tanks they used to cook with, a porta potty. One of them carried a porta potty on his back. They were just incredible. So we took a group photo. There's the 10 of us at the start. And here's one of the big reasons I recommend Exploradis if you want to hike the Inca Trail. 500 permits are issued every day to hike the Inca Trail. That's a lot of people. Most of the other tour companies start at the same place. Exploradis is the only one that starts here. And so they start at a different place and it's not so crowded. And then we're out of sync with the other groups. We're almost all, until the end, we're camping in places where we're the only group there and not with a whole bunch of other people, which I thought was really, really nice. There are some disadvantages to the way they did the hike, and I'll mention those as well. But overall, I think it was a good idea. So let me go back here. Notice corn. We were in farm country. This is winter, but because, and you can see in the background, there's a mountain with snow on it. But because they're close to the equator, they grow stuff all year round. And that was kind of cool. So we start at 8,750 feet. Now, if you remember back to the elevation I showed at the beginning of the slideshow, Machu Picchu is 7,900 something. So we were actually starting higher than we're ending. But the Inca Trail went up. Not the first day. The first day, we really didn't gain much elevation at all, which again was good to acclimate us and get us used to hiking. Some of us trained for it anyway, and we didn't need it. But others who didn't live close to mountains, I mean, that's a good idea. Hiking at 8,750 feet, even on relatively flat land, if you're not used to elevation, you're going to feel it. So it was good to have that first day be relatively flat, but still at a fairly high elevation to get you acclimated. So we hiked through farm country, and we started out on a road. There's the porters carrying all of our stuff, and of course they passed us because they had to pass us and set up the kitchen and the dining tent for us to eat lunch. And then we actually ended up hiking on railroad tracks. Maybe that's why the other companies don't do this. But they knew the train schedule, so we didn't have to jump off the tracks because a train was coming around the corner. So there was a short distance where we were actually on train tracks. And there's that mountain we're seeing in the back. It was called Veronica or Wilka Wike, 19,300 feet. That's why it has snow, even though it's close to the equator. The highest point in Peru, and of course, these are the Andes Mountains. The highest point is 22,205 feet. So this is where we stopped for lunch. The cooks set up in this old abandoned adobe building to cook. And dining tent was set up for us, real plates and silverware. They have to carry all this stuff. And, it was really, really nice. We drank a lot of iced tea. It was coca tea, which is supposed to help you deal with the altitude. I think we also had it hot as well in the morning. And there you see our guide on the left, and directly across from him was the guy, his assistant, who was the sweep on the hikes. And I'm in the green shirt there. So after lunch, we actually enter the official Inca Trail for the first time. And the other groups go through here early on, right? So they were all gone. It was just our group at this point. And they had to check our passports and our permits. The permits are all paid for. And then we were back on the trail hiking along the river here. Lots of rivers, no lakes. It's too steep for lakes. It's not like the Sierras where it's granite carved out by glaciers that makes a great spot for a lake to form. None of that here. Lots of rivers, but no lakes. So 8,694, that's actually a little bit lower than we started. This is where we camped. And it was an Inca historical site. So we got there early in the afternoon, not too long after lunch. We set up our tents, or actually they set up our tents. We put our gear inside. I chose to bring my own sleeping bag and mattress pad, you could rent the, for a slightly more money, you could have them supply it. I didn't want to be sleeping in a sleeping bag that had other people sleeping in it before me, so I brought my own. But those were what our tents looked like. And then look behind me, Inca ruins. It was fabulous. We were there early in the afternoon. We had all this time to go explore. And we're the only ones there. So we're right in the middle of farm country. There's corn growing. That's probably close to being ready to harvest. And then here's corn at an earlier stage. Like you say, they grow 12 months out of the year. So this is, what was it, 8,600 or something? It said on that sign. High up, middle of winter, and yet they're growing. So we went to visit the site. There's two people from or I guess that's just one person. And this was so much fun going in and out of the buildings. There are no roofs left, but all the stone structures are there. And, doorways and windows. And the only thing I can compare it to is when I was a kid and went to Disneyland, I loved to go to Tom Sawyer's Island and climb around and go across the bridges. So here I felt like a kid again. I was exploring these Inca ruins and it was just so much fun. So here I'm at the top and I'm looking back down, and way off on the left-hand side, about the middle of the screen, you can see some little blue things. Those are our blue tents. That's our campground. You can see the rows of corn down below in the farm. And of course, the high mountains in the background. Very steep. All the mountains there are very steep. So on July 11th, we start our second day of hiking on the Inca Trail. It was a long day of climbing over 4,000 feet elevation. So that first day, we really didn't gain much at all. It was slightly up, slightly down, ending at slightly lower than we started. But here we really started climbing. And this is early in the morning. I took a shot of the ruins as we were hiking away from our campsite. We crossed a bridge. And lunchtime. I should mention the routine in the morning. We at 6 o'clock, the porters put a bowl of warm water and washcloths outside of our tent. We were expected to be fully ready to eat at 6:30 and have anything out of the tent we wanted to carry with us for the day. The porters then packed up the tents and the sleeping bags and everything and put them in their big backpacks. And we went to eat breakfast. Here's the breakfast table set before the food's out. And after eating, then they have to pack up all that, the eating tent, the dining tent, and everything else. And they passed us because they have to set up for lunch. So they have to hike faster than we do. And here we get into, we're climbing, and lots of rock steps. And these weren't shallow. It was they were big steps up. And I saw some photos of Incas from way back. They were not a small people. They were tall. But the native people that live there now, their ancestors that live there now, are all very short, I think because of malnutrition and mistreatment from the Spaniards over hundreds of years. Passion fruit flowers. Remember I said we're kind of on the edge of the rainforest? It's just growing wild there. Flowers are beautiful. More stone steps. More stone steps. And then we finally, after climbing 4,000 feet, we get to our second campground. So this is, it's close to 13,000 feet. It's like 12,600 or something like that. And let me say something about the temperature. So during the day, we lucked out. It was sunny. the high was about 60. So that's nice hiking weather. Not too hot, not too cold, but it did up this high. It got cold at night. And we could see snow up, we're a little closer to it. This is what it was like around the campground. And there was a little farmer there with llamas, not far from the campground. So on July 12th, we wake up with ice covering our tents. It was 20 degrees. We eat breakfast and start the third day of hiking the Inca Trail. And this was the hardest because we had to go over 3 passes. And you go over a pass. The first one was the highest. It was called Dead Woman's Pass. And after going up over that pass, and it was about maybe 1,000 feet from where we were camping that we had to go up. But then we had to descend probably 2,000 feet at least, and then go up over another pass. And then we had to descend again at least 1,000 feet and then go up to the top of another pass. So that was a long day. That's what the pass looked like. Looking up, that's Dead Woman's Pass. Here we are hiking up. It's very steep. Here we are posed at the top of the pass with our hiking leader. Tomas was his name. Here's Tomas with his assistant. I can't remember his name. So the pass is 13,829 feet high. And then we had to go down, 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 all the way down to where you can see at the bottom. We had to go all the way down there before climbing up the next pass. So this was the one disadvantage of the way Exploradus organized it. They started slow. They started, where no one else started. But it meant that this third day of hiking was really, really strenuous. But I didn't have a problem with it. I trained for it. Here's the steps going down. And because it was such a long day, we had a brunch. They served us grilled cheese sandwiches, no tent, no fancy cookware. It's just, and we didn't eat all at once. We were spread out quite a bit, even though there were only 10 of us. So, you would stop, have some tea, coca tea, eat a grilled cheese sandwich, and then back on the trail again. And more steps. So we're still going down. So this one, I had descended that and I turned around to take a picture to see what I had just done. We're going down. Mountains all around us. Now, as we're hiking, we come across other Inca ruins. And I think the guide told us that some of these were posts along, because this was a trade route. And so they had little posts where they had food and water, and people could spend the night if they were traveling at some of the bigger ones. And so we could stop and explore those. Here we are at one of them. Here I am. And this is what it'll look like. So I'm standing here. We hike up and looking back down, that's where I was. So you can see it's kind of a circular thing. And all this stuff probably had thatched roofs, but of course that hasn't survived, but the stone foundations have. And notice how steep the mountains are. That's why there's no lakes. There's no flat spot for a lake to form. I think this is looking back at Dead Woman's Pass. We've now started climbing up the other side, but I'm looking back at where we went over, and you can see the trail coming down. And here we are almost to the top of the second pass. And there was a little pond there. That's the only standing water we ever saw, but I wouldn't call it a lake. It's more like a pond. And again, we're looking back at Dead Woman's Pass. So this pass is not as high. We're looking up at Dead Woman's Pass. It's not quite as high. And then we have to go down again. But the scenery is wonderful. Here, I've come down ahead of my hiking partner, Bob. I asked him to stay up there so I could take a picture of him to give a kind of a feel for the steepness of the trail. Now we're approaching this rather large compound. Off in the distance, Inca ruins, I'm sure was a outpost. Now we're getting closer to it. Notice on the left, you can see the stone steps going up to it. When we got there, that's what it looked like. And we were running a little late. We had been stopping and exploring places, but we decided this would take too long to stop and explore. And we were getting tired. And that's a rather steep stairway up to the ruin. So we didn't explore this one. And then we started coming towards another one. We didn't go inside this one. We just went around it. But again, it was probably an outpost for the trade along the trade route. And now we're climbing back up. We've gone over 2 passes and we got to climb back up to like 12,000 feet for the last pass. And we have like a tunnel to go through at one point, come out on the other side, and notice it's not so clear, looks kind of foggy because we're getting into the misty part of the rainforest. And now you can't see much off to the side because there's moisture in the air. We're kind of in the clouds. And there's our campsite. And now there are lots of other people here because this is usually the last campsite for most groups. So here we had to share. We went way up to the top. It was on a slant and we were up at the top, kind of on the rocks there. And you had to be careful. There's our dining tent already set up when we got there. And notice my hiking partner, Bob, has a jacket on because it was a little cooler here. We're 12,000 feet. There's moisture in the air we're like in the clouds practically. So it was a little cooler. And you had to be careful off to the side. It was a steep drop and another Inca ruins down below that we would hike past the next morning. Well, that next morning, July 13th, we woke up early, hiked up above our camp to get a good view of the sun rising before eating breakfast. And notice we're all dressed warmly. It's cold. This was a typical breakfast. Pancakes with elderberry jam. And it was so good. The jam tasted so good. When we got back to Cusco, I bought several jars of it and brought it home. But you know what? It didn't taste quite as good at home as it did on the trail. After eating our breakfast, we took a group photo before starting our 4th day of hiking the Inca Trail. We had to descend about 4,100 feet to get to Machu Picchu. And we had to hike down past this place. Steep stone steps. And I'm not going to try to pronounce that. But it gives the altitude in meters. I translated it's 11,854, and we camped up above it, so I think we were about 12,000. And very steep steps. And another cave to go through, a tunnel. And here I am coming out the other side. So, Winaiwana was discovered in 1941. And, no, wait a second. That one was, trying to think. Well, Machu Picchu was discovered in the early 1900s. I'm not sure what the 1941 is for. The other one says discovered 1992, open to hikers in 1998. So when they discovered in the early 1900s, when they discovered Machu Picchu, it was unknown and it was totally overgrown with vegetation. and some British archaeologists discovered it and, hired the locals to clear the vegetation off of it and try to preserve the site. But this other one up above Machu Picchu, which is where they grew their food for Machu Picchu, was discovered in 1992, and they cleared it and opened to hikers in 1998. So the Spaniards did not know that Machu Picchu existed because the Incas didn't tell them. And they it was like a retreat for the royalty, a retreat, a place to go to get away from the hustle bustle of the capital city. And so that's why it wasn't discovered until the 1900s. So here off, you can see the terraced land there. That's what was discovered in 1992. And it is thought that that's where they grew most of the food for Machu Picchu, which is a fairly large settlement that, people live there all year round. The support people, the royalty would come up to visit from time to time. And you can see this terraces. So we're still quite a ways above Machu Picchu. This is 9,503. And one thing that's interesting about these terraces, can you see the rock steps sticking out from the side? So they could climb up those stone steps that go up at a slant to get from one level to the next level, the next terrace up. Just looking down towards Machu Picchu. Then we had to climb down from this place. Rather steep in places. Again, lots of flat areas to grow food. I like this shot because of the clouds. And then we had lunch. And this was the cooking area. There were like 3 or 4 groups eating lunch here. So only, we had 2 cooks. I'm not sure which ones were our cooks. But there were other groups fixing lunch there. We had our dining tent set up. We ate lunch here. That was our final lunch on the trail. They fed us well, and it all tasted wonderful. Notice there are potatoes. That's something they have a lot of. And then we continued to hike down, and it got more like jungle and rainforest as we did. And then we came to this place where we had to hike up, and this hiker kind of ditched her poles, and she's going up on all fours. It's so darn steep. And here I am looking back down at her husband and another hiker. And so here we are, and here they have another terraced area just above Machu Picchu where I'm sure they grew food for Machu Picchu. And this is called the Sun Gate, where you get this first view of Machu Picchu. It's from the Sun Gate. And here we are posing. Intipunku, or Sun Gate. And again, a shot of Machu Picchu with the agricultural area a little above. And here we are walking through that terrace place where they probably grew food for the Machu Picchu settlement. This is the iconic view. I took this picture. I think that was the first slide I used on the slideshow. It was a fairly large community with housing and religious buildings. And it was a lot of stonework built up. So we had just hiked down 4,100 feet. We were tired, and we got up very early to watch the sunrise. So we didn't really visit Machu Picchu on this day. We walked through it. And then we got on a bus, and we rode down to Agua Calientes and stayed in a hotel. So July 14th, we took the bus from Agua Calientes. We got up early, up to Machu Picchu, and our guide gave us a 4-hour tour. Our guide was our hiking leader. So I took a whole bunch of pictures to try to give different perspectives and views of this little city here. And you can see it's really on different levels. And of course, all the roofs are gone, but the stone foundations are still there. They did have one building where they put what they thought the thatched roof would look like. There it is up at the top. See, that has a roof, but that roof did not survive 500 years. They just put that to give an example of what they thought probably the roofs looked like. There were a lot of people, and often you were standing in a line walking along a path, which was not real pleasant. We were used to being off by ourselves, so it made the experience, I mean, it was like Disneyland almost. The number of people there, the tour buses that brought them up and just dropped them off, there were a lot of people. But the place is just gorgeous. I wanted to get up earlier than everyone else did, to get an early start before it got too crowded. As it was, we got there and started, I think it was 6:47 when we got there to start our tour. I would have liked to have started it at 6, but everyone was tired from all the hiking and they didn't want to get up that early. This is the edge of it, and you can see some foundation walls and stuff, but it's right on the edge of the community with the steep side there to the right. This gives a good view of all the people up near the top. It's really crowded, as you can see. This was an interesting construction. So they have the cut stones, but they used boulders that were already there to build on. Kind of interesting construction there. And this was a religious thing, and I don't remember the significance of it. It was 7 years ago. I've forgotten. But it was supposed to be some part of an animal or something. I don't remember. And this is a great shot to kind of end with. So after the tour of Machu Picchu, we took the bus back down to Agua Calientes and had a big early afternoon meal, then took the train from Agua Calientes up to Cusco, arriving in the early evening, July 15th. We checked out of the hotel in Cusco, took a bus to the airport, and flew home with stops and plane changes in Lima, Dallas before arriving in LAX. And I just realized I never stopped to take questions, but this is the end of the talk. So let me see if I can find my mouse to stop the share. Where is it?
We do have a lot of questions though, John.
I'm sure you do. There we go. Stop share. Or maybe I should leave it there.
Yeah,
on the
that's
side
fine.
in case you want to refer back to a picture.
Sure. Starting with your acclimation in Cusco. Did the Incas grow potatoes? Were potatoes more predominant than corn? What were the Incas growing?
Well, the potatoes were native. I think they probably grew corn too, but the potatoes were unique to Peru. There's all the different varieties they had. So yeah, it was a part of their diet.
Right, fascinating. Did you bring unusual gear? Different than what you used to hike in the Sierras or in the Western US?
No, the one thing we did bring I brought oh shoot, what's it called? A SteriPen to disinfect my water. So we were told, don't drink the water, right? So in the hotel in Cusco, any water I drank was like the hot tea. I figured that was boiled. That was okay. That we drank a lot of coca tea, but I had the SteriPen. I'd fill up my water bottle, and SteriPen uses ultraviolet light to kill all bacteria. And I take my SteriPen in the Sierras as well to disinfect or kill the bacteria in my water. But that's when I first used it. I bought it for that Peru trip, and we used it a lot. Now, in the campsite, we didn't drink water per se. We drank coca tea, which had been boiled, and the porters we were always camping next to a stream, to a water source, and they would boil the water. And so it was safe, but no special hiking gear. No.
Did you have any illnesses or any problems? Any altitude sickness? Any gastro problems?
So in Cusco, one couple ate from a roadside stand, and they got violently sick. But they were the only ones that had problems with the food. And we, at that restaurant we ate at, there were 4 of us ate together, 2 men, 2 women. The 2 women did not want to eat the salad because we have been warned, the salad has been washed with the water, which may be contaminated. But it looked so good. And I was on antibiotics anyway because I was sick on the trip. I had an infected eustachian tube, which caused me great pain when we landed at sea level in Cusco because of the change in pressure. I thought my eardrums were going to explode. But I figured I was safe with the antibiotics. And the other guy with me, he was just brave. And so we not only ate our salads, but we ate the women's salads too. We ate quite well. And we had 4 meals there and never got sick at all. Now, as far as altitude sickness, only one of our hikers had problems, but I think it was not just altitude sickness. I think it was, I think she got overheated because she gets, some people really get cold easily, and it was cold when we got up in the morning, right? So she would really bundle up, and then she would sort of shed layers, but she didn't have a backpack. She had a fanny pack. So the layers were just kind of all around her core, hanging over the fanny pack, and I think she got too hot on those hikes, up those steep trails. And so she had some trouble. But she brought along some medication to take for that. I think the rest of us, and certainly me, chose not to take any medication because the side effect was it was a diuretic. And I didn't want to have to deal with that problem.
What was the weight limit on your gear?
Yeah, I think it was like maybe 40 pounds or maybe 30 pounds. I don't remember exactly what it was, but we were very careful. It had our clothes. It had my sleeping bag. Some people rented sleeping bags, but I had my sleeping bag and pad. But the food was all carried by them. And we had a day pack, and I carried all my snacks and water in that. So the duffel was mainly just for clothes and sleeping gear. And I think it was maybe 30 pounds. I don't know. They did weigh them.
Yeah, I'll bet they did. What kind of training did you do?
Training.
Yeah, to prepare.
That's a whole nother slideshow. Because my friend Bob Crosby has a condo up in Mammoth. Yeah. And we went up to his condo, and we did 4 days in a row of hiking at high altitude, including White Mountain, which is over 14,000 feet, and Mount Dana, which is over 13,000 feet. So that's what we did. And then just hiking before that. You know, I was a hiking leader, so I was leading hikes in the San Gabriels to the peaks in the Cucamonga Wilderness, which I still do now. So that was, you know, I was in good shape, but doing that extra altitude stuff, I think, was good.
Good. Where do people go to relieve themselves on the trail? Just off in the brush?
Okay, you know, that's a good question. Yeah, while you're hiking, but every campground, like I said, one of the porters carried a porta potty. Every campground had the porta potty that Explorandus provided. Plus, the first night and the third and fourth night had actual restrooms at the campsite.
Wow, okay. Did anyone end up with foot pain or foot issues?
I don't remember that. You know, all of us had sore feet coming down 4,100 feet on that last day of hiking. You know, I mean, our quads were aching and our feet were tired from all that downhill. But I don't think anybody had any serious, no blister problems.
And how many miles did you average per day?
You know, that it occurred to me, I did not include mileage, did I?
It's
And
okay.
you know, I took a photo of something that had that information. For some reason, I never put it into the slideshow, and so I don't know.
Right.
The longest hike was that one where we had to go over 3 passes. And so we started hiking at 7 a.m. approximately, maybe 7:15. And Bob and I got into the campground at 5. That was a long day of hiking. So I'm sure we did at least 12 miles, if not a little more.
Wow. With all the up and down. That's
Yeah.
rigorous.
Yeah.
Final question. Did at Machu Picchu, did the authorities control access? Because certain areas looked like they were very crowded and certain areas looked very uncrowded.
You know, most people were there with tour guides. So they took their group wherever they wanted to, but you know, a lot of the most popular things to look at were crowded. But you were free to roam around. There wasn't much. I think they counted on the tour guides to kind of keep their people in order.
Well, and I'll end up with Chris Torres had a very nice comment. She said she was getting dizzy looking at all this, but she really appreciated your presentation and all the wonderful photos and explanations. Just spectacular, John. Just spectacular.
It was a trip of a lifetime for me. I really enjoyed it.
Spectacular. And just the rigor of it and the beauty and the history. It must have been kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It really was. So I noticed at one point we had 19 people. I don't know if we got higher than that. If there's no other questions, I think I'll stop the recording.
One last comment. Wonderful photos. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, well, you're welcome. It was fun going back over the pictures. I had done this slideshow 6 years ago for the Los Serranos Group, but it was only on the Inca Trail. And I added the Cusco part and the Machu Picchu part in preparing for tonight. And that was fun, you know, going back over the photos. So it was great. I'm going to stop the recording.